Most independent artists don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because nobody ever explains the business side clearly. Not in a real way. Not in a way that matches what artists are actually dealing with day to day. There's a lot of advice out there, but most of it skips over the part where people are confused, broke, and trying to figure things out in real time. This isn't about hype. It's not about shortcuts. And it's definitely not about pretending I've already made it. This is about understanding the game while you're still in it. When I first started making music, I thought the goal was simple. Make good songs. Get people to listen. Everything else would work itself out. That's what most artists are told at the beginning. What nobody explains is how long that mindset can keep you stuck. Because you can be talented, consistent, and serious about your craft, and still not know how to turn that into anything sustainable. A lot of independent artists aren't failing. They're just operating without a framework. No roadmap. No real understanding of ownership, monetization, or long-term strategy. That confusion adds up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Exposure doesn't automatically equal income. Streams don't automatically equal stability. And visibility doesn't automatically mean progress. You can have motion without momentum. A lot of artists are busy all the time, posting, releasing, promoting, but still don't feel like they're actually moving forward. That's not a motivation problem. That's a clarity problem. Without understanding the business side, every decision feels heavier than it needs to be. You're guessing instead of building. And when you're guessing, everything feels urgent. Every post feels like it has to work. Every release feels like it has to be the one. Every slow week feels like failure. That pressure adds up. A lot of independent artists are carrying stress they don't even realize comes from uncertainty, not lack of effort. Because when you don't know why you're doing something, it's hard to stay consistent with it. You start questioning yourself constantly. Should I drop another song? Should I switch platforms? Should I change my sound? Should I promote harder? None of those questions are wrong. But without a framework, they turn into noise. This is where a lot of artists burn out. Not because they don't love music anymore, but because everything feels reactive instead of intentional. You're responding to what you think you're supposed to do instead of moving with purpose. And the hardest part is that from the outside, it can look like you're doing everything right. You're active, you're visible, you're consistent. But internally, it feels scattered. That's usually a sign that the foundation hasn't been fully thought through yet. Understanding the business side doesn't mean turning into a corporate robot. It means knowing what each move is supposed to accomplish. When you understand the role of exposure, streams, and visibility, they stop feeling like the goal and start feeling like tools. Tools work best when you know what you're building. Without that clarity, progress feels random, and random progress is hard to trust. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two independent artists at the same stage, same level of talent, same amount of time, same access to tools and platforms. On the surface, they look identical. Artist A releases music whenever it's ready. They promote hard for a few days, watch the numbers, and then move on to the next thing. Artist B takes a little more time before releasing. They think about who the music is for, where it fits, and what the release is supposed to accomplish. Neither one goes viral. Neither one blows up overnight. But 6 months later, their situations feel very different. Artist A feels frustrated. They've been active the whole time, but can't clearly explain what worked and what didn't. Everything feels hit or miss. Artist B still isn't famous, but they have clarity. They understand which platforms bring real engagement, which releases connected, and where their energy actually pays off. That difference doesn't show up in streams right away. It shows up in confidence. Because when you understand what's happening, slow growth feels manageable. When you don't, slow growth feels personal. This is where a lot of artists get discouraged. They assume something is wrong with them, when really something is missing from the process. The artist who understands the game isn't moving faster. They're moving with intention. They're not reacting to every trend. They're not changing direction every month. They're building piece by piece. And over time, that adds up. Not in a dramatic way. In a steady, quiet way that most people don't notice until it starts working. That's the difference between staying busy and actually building momentum. This is something I'm still working through myself. Figuring out how to move consistently without burning out. How to stay focused without feeling boxed in. How to make decisions that actually move the needle instead of just looking productive. A lot of what slows artists down isn't lack of effort, it's misdirected effort. I've spent time chasing things that didn't fit my situation. Opportunities that sounded good in theory, but didn't make sense for where I was at the time. I followed advice that worked for someone else and assumed it should work the same way for me. It rarely does. That's part of learning how to think for yourself in this space. At some point, you realize that not every opportunity is actually an opportunity. Some things just look good on the outside. And when you don't have clarity, it's easy to confuse activity with progress. You start measuring success by how busy you are instead of how aligned you feel. That's when burnout creeps in. Not all at once, slowly. You get tired, but you keep pushing. You feel overwhelmed, but you keep posting. You feel uncertain, but you don't stop long enough to reassess. I've learned that consistency doesn't mean doing everything all the time. It means choosing a few things and doing them well. And that takes discipline, not hype. Being honest with yourself about what's working and what isn't can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because pretending you have it all figured out only delays real growth. Progress doesn't come from acting like an expert. It comes from paying attention, from noticing patterns, from adjusting without ego, from staying curious instead of defensive. That's the mindset I'm still developing, and that's the part of the process most people skip over. If this episode is helping you think a little clearer about your path as an independent artist, the simplest way to support what we're building is to like, share, and subscribe. That tells the algorithm this conversation matters, and it helps this reach artists who need it. And if you want to support beyond that, you can also grab merch at southentmusic.com. Everything there helps keep this series independent and moving forward. No pressure, just support if it feels right. Now let's get back to it. Independent Artist Game isn't about telling you exactly what to do. It's about helping you understand how to think while you're building. Because once you understand the environment you're operating in, your decisions change. You stop reacting to everything. You stop chasing every new idea. You stop feeling like you're behind just because someone else is louder. Instead, you start making moves with intention. You begin to see the difference between what looks productive and what actually moves you forward, between what feels urgent and what's truly important. That shift doesn't make things easy, but it makes them clearer. And clarity is what allows consistency to exist without burnout. The goal isn't to have everything figured out. The goal is to understand why you're making the choices you're making. When your goals, your resources, and your daily actions start lining up, progress stops feeling random. Even when it's slow, it feels earned. That's when independence starts to feel less chaotic and more sustainable. This series is about building that kind of awareness, the kind that helps you move with patience instead of pressure. Because long-term success isn't built from hype, it's built from alignment. If you're an independent artist listening to this and feeling uncertain, that doesn't mean you're behind. It usually means you're early in the process. Most people quit right around this stage, not because they failed, but because things stopped feeling clear. And clarity doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from slowing down long enough to understand what you're actually building. That's what this series is about. Not highlight reels, not overnight success stories, just honest conversations about what it really takes to move forward as an independent artist without losing yourself along the way. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You just need to stay intentional about the next decision. This is Independent Artist Game, and this is just the beginning.